The laughter came first, short, sharp, and just a little too eager. "Your orders say observe only, ma'am," Lieutenant Ryan Cole said, his voice carrying across the flight training center. "Which means you stay behind the yellow line and let the men do the real work." His words dripped with condescension, every syllable sharpened into a blade meant to cut. The recruits, young restless aviators desperate for approval, chuckled on cue. Their laughter wasn't bold. It was nervous, a reflex born from wanting to align themselves with the authority figure in the room. Cole didn't laugh with them. He didn't have to. Their reaction was his validation. At the edge of the room stood Major Laura Kane, her flight suit faded to a shade of sage green that hadn't been standard issue in years. She gave no sign she'd even heard him. Her face line from hours of squinting into the sun remained placid. She continued her methodical, pre-flight check, fingers moving across her data pad with calm, practiced economy. To the recruits, she was invisible, a relic, maybe a desk-bound officer dragged in for mandatory requalification. To Cole, she was convenient prey. And to himself, he was king of this room. Call sign Viper Swagger, wrapped in a flight helmet bag. But not everyone saw her the way he did. From the shadowed back of the room, General Abrams leaned against the wall watching. His eyes weren't on Cole, and they weren't on the younger aviators snickering at the joke. His gaze was fixed on Kane. He noticed the small details, the straightness of her spine, the way her weight rested lightly on the balls of her feet, the quiet efficiency in how she glanced at the wind flags outside the simulator bay. These were not the mannerisms of a washed-up reservist. They were the unconscious reflexes of someone who had lived her life on the edge of disaster and walked away more times than anyone should. Moments like this rarely announce themselves. They creep in disguised as routine, a joke at someone's expense, a ripple of laughter, a crooked smile. But beneath the surface, they are pressure points. Cole believed he had scored a victory. The recruits believed they had witnessed one. What they were actually seeing was the opening move of a confrontation that would define them all. Kane hadn't flinched because there was nothing to flinch from. Her every gesture, the rhythm of her breathing, the steady way she brushed dust from her sleeve, was not weakness. It was control. And when the training demanded its answer, it wouldn't be Cole's voice the simulator obeyed. It would be Kane's silence. General Abrams raised a hand and the final drill was announced. The chatter in the room died instantly. Every pilot straightened their shoulders, stiffening as if gravity had grown heavier in that instant. This was no ordinary test. Cole's smirk widened as he relished the announcement. Today's drill is the unforgiving minute. Dual engine flameout. Total hydraulic loss. Avionics blackout at 50,000 feet. No one's ever landed it, he boomed, enjoying the ripple it sent through the room. The best score is a clean ejection. The objective isn't survival, it's knowing when to quit. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew this scenario. It was infamous. It was a designed failure, a cruel exercise meant to teach humility. A powerless aircraft at altitude doesn't glide home, it falls. The correct answer wasn't to land. It was to punch out and accept defeat. Cole gestured toward the simulator pod with a cocky grin. "Try not to break my multi-million-dollar toy, ma'am." Kane finished her checklist, the final green light blinking across her pad. She looked up, her gaze calm, her voice low and steady. "I understand the parameters, Lieutenant." That was all she said before walking toward the simulator. No hesitation, no fanfare. Just measured steps that carried more weight than Cole's bravado ever could. The canopy hissed shut behind her. The control room screens lit up with cockpit visuals. At first, the world looked calm, blue sky stretching across the horizon, engines humming. Then chaos. Engine 1 flameout intoned the synthetic voice. Red alarms blared across the console. Seconds later, Engine 2 flameout. The lights died one by one until only a set of primitive analog gauges glowed weakly. Total hydraulic failure. Avionics offline. The recruits exhaled sharply. They had all been here before. Everyone knew how this ended. Cole leaned into his microphone, smug as ever. "That's your cue, Major. Grab the handle and save yourself." Nervous chuckles rose, though weaker this time. But Kane's hands never reached for the ejection lever. Instead, they flowed across the controls with unhurried precision, feet dancing on rudder pedals, fingertips adjusting trim, her breathing so calm it almost slowed time itself. And then the impossible began to happen. On the main screen, the horizon steadied. The lifeless aircraft settled into a glide, not a fall. Airspeed stabilized, descent angle leveled. Cole blinked, his confidence slipping. "She's buying herself a few extra seconds," he muttered, though his voice betrayed doubt. General Abrams said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. He knew what he was seeing. The recruits, too, leaned forward unconsciously, their earlier smirks replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. Kane lowered the landing gear manually, the emergency crank groaning, before locking the wheels into place. It was a brutal maneuver, something most pilots practiced only once or twice in their careers, and never under conditions like this. Yet she made it look effortless. On the massive screen, the runway that had been a faint blur grew larger, perfectly centered in the crosshairs. The descent was clean, steady, graceful. Cole's complexion turned pale. This isn't possible," he whispered. Her hands moved with the delicacy of a surgeon guiding the steel giant with precise corrections. The aircraft kissed the runway wheels, meeting asphalt with a whisper instead of a crash. Nose down, roll steady. The machine slowed along the center line until it stopped exactly on the marker. The simulator froze. Across the display appeared one simple line of text: "Aircraft on block." Perfect execution. The silence in the room was deafening. For 10 long seconds, no one moved. No one dared breathe. Cole's clipboard slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. His world of certainty shattered into pieces. The canopy hissed open. Kane stepped out, helmet under her arm, her face unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She brushed her sleeve again as though clearing away dust, her silence now heavier than any boast. It was the silence of mastery. General Abrams broke the spell with a single word. "Lieutenant." Cole stiffened. Abrams extended a hand toward the technician. "Bring me Major Kane's record." "Now!" The room held its breath. The technician's fingers flew across the console, unlocking layers of classified data. When the file appeared, its weight filled the room like a storm front rolling in. Abrams read aloud, "Major Laura Kane, United States Army Aviation, call sign Wraith, over 5,000 combat flight hours, 14 combat deployments, all classified. Distinguished Flying Cross, Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, Purple Heart." He paused, his voice dropping lower. "Medal of Honor." Gasps rippled through the recruits. Even Cole staggered back a step. Abrams continued, his gaze fixed on Kane. "That maneuver you just witnessed wasn't imagination. It wasn't luck. She's done it before. Afghanistan 2012. Black Hawk crippled by enemy fire, dual engine failure, hydraulics gone, co-pilot down, 3 wounded in the back. She guided that bird into a dry riverbed and walked them all out alive. She is the only pilot in history to survive such a landing." The room went still, as though the air itself recognized the gravity of what had been revealed. Abrams straightened, then raised his hand in a slow, deliberate salute. It was not for her rank. It was for her reputation, for her mastery, for the silence she carried like a weapon. "Major Kane," he said, his voice resonant, "your reputation precedes you. It is an honor." Kane returned the salute with quiet precision. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than anything words could carry. The legend began that very night. By sundown, every aviator on base had heard the story of the Kane Glide. They whispered it in ready rooms and barracks, repeating the details like scripture: the taunts, the silence, the impossible landing, and the general salute. The next morning, Lieutenant Ryan Cole walked into the hangar before dawn. No swagger, no smirk. In his hands, not a clipboard, but a broom. He swept the simulator bay floor in silence, each motion an unspoken admission. Later that week, he found Kane reviewing a maintenance log. His words were quiet, stripped of ego. "Ma'am," he said, eyes lowered, "I was arrogant. I was wrong. Will you teach me?" Kane gave only a nod. That was enough. From then on, she taught not with speeches or ego, but with patience. She showed Cole and the younger aviators how to read the wind, how to trust fundamentals, how to find calm where others panicked. Her lessons were simple, but they cut deeper than any lecture. Soon the recruits who had once laughed at her silence began treating the chalk line in front of the simulator as sacred ground. They started calling it the Kane line. To cross it meant leaving arrogance behind improving yourself through discipline. Months later, the culture of the training center was unrecognizable. The bluster that once filled the air was gone, replaced by quiet professionalism. Scores improved, yes, but more importantly, respect changed shape. No longer awarded to the loudest voice, it was earned in silence. For those of us who've worn the uniform, the truth is timeless. Real mastery doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It proves itself silently, undeniably. And that is why the Kane Glide endures not just as a maneuver, but as a lesson. A reminder that legacy isn't what you say, it's what you leave behind. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about the quiet professionals you've known. And if you want more stories where humility defeats arrogance, subscribe and stay with us. These are lessons worth remembering and worth passing on.